The days of Noah have returned. Apocalypse prophecies unfolding now. Do you feel like something is wrong with the world? Like everything is falling apart before your eyes, and you can't do anything to stop it? Chaos is everywhere. Endless wars, natural disasters devastating cities, families torn apart by violence and hunger. What once seemed under control has now turned into a storm beyond measure. Are you ready to face what comes next? Because here's the raw truth. The days of Noah have returned, and the signs are screaming that there's no time to lose. Imagine waking up on a normal day, only to discover that everything has changed. You hear the sound of sirens, people screaming, and nature rebelling. And it's not a nightmare. It's the reflection of a world that ignored the warnings for far too long. The prophecies of Revelation aren't distant tales or religious fantasies. They're happening right now, in real time, and you're at the center of it all. That's why you need to subscribe to this channel now so you don't miss any of the revealing details we'll explore here. And while you watch, don't forget to comment your thoughts and share with friends and family. They need to know what's coming too. Some people prefer to close their eyes, pretending all of this is just a phase. But what we're living through is more than just a difficult moment. It's the beginning of something that will test our faith, courage, and humanity. Think about this. If today were your last day before the final flood, what would you do? Would you keep ignoring the signs or finally understand that the time to act is now? This is the moment to wake up. You can choose to keep living as if everything will return to normal, or you can face reality and prepare for what's coming. The next few minutes could be the most important of your life. The world you know is changing, and there's no going back. Now is the time to decide which side you'll be on when the storm finally arrives. The sky darkens. Signs we can't ignore. Have you felt the air growing heavier? Like the world around you has changed, laden with something indescribable? The sky darkens, but it's not just about the weather shifting. It's about something greater, something you can feel but can't explain. Disasters are spiraling out of control. One day, it's a flood wiping out cities. The next, it's an earthquake destroying lives in seconds. It's as if the earth is trying to warn us. But are we listening? Think about the news. Wars, hunger, violence. Things are getting worse, and we can't keep pretending it's all normal. We're so consumed by our phones, jobs, and daily worries that we've forgotten to look around. Everything seems to continue as usual, but deep down, we know that's not the case. Are these signs merely coincidences? Or are we living what the prophecies foretold? Picture stepping outside, and suddenly the sun vanishes behind dark clouds. The wind intensifies, the temperature drops, and you feel something strange. It's not just the weather that's changed, it's the world. It's a warning that everything could collapse at any moment. But are we ready to face what's coming? Or are we too distracted to realize that the darkening sky is no coincidence? In Noah's time, people ignored the signs too. They went on with their lives as if nothing could go wrong. And by the time they realized, it was too late. Aren't we doing the same thing? Living as if nothing will change while everything around us screams that something massive is about to happen? Maybe it's time to stop and think, what if all of this is a wake-up call for us to change our ways? The storms, the earthquakes, the tragedies. Everything seems to be intensifying. People say it's because of global warming, the destruction of nature. But what if it's more than that? What if these disasters are a clear message that something greater is at work? It's impossible to deny that the world is different. It's impossible to pretend that everything is fine. When the sky darkens, it's not just the day that changes. It's a sign that demands our attention. God has used signs like this before to warn humanity. Could He be doing it again? Are we ignoring the obvious? In Noah's days, people laughed at the warnings. Today, we do the same with those trying to alert us. How long will we remain blind? You might think this is an exaggeration. But what if it isn't? What if everything happening, pandemics, disasters, conflicts, is part of a bigger plan? What if we are in the middle of something far more serious than we can comprehend? Isn't it time to set aside fear and take action? Or will we wait until it's too late to do anything? Stop and think. What would you do if everything changed tomorrow? if the world you know collapsed? This is not about fiction or speculation. It's about real life, about the signs right in front of you. Could we be living through the last days described in the Bible? The days of Noah are returning, but are you prepared? The silence before the storm is the most unsettling. It gives you time to reflect on what comes next. What if this silence is the final warning? What if the next thunder marks the beginning of something beyond our control? The sky darkens, and we can't stop it. The question is, what will you do now? Noah and God's ancient warning. One man, alone, with a mission that seemed absurd. He spent his days building something enormous, something no one understood. Noah had no team, no support, but he had something few possessed, the certainty that he was hearing God's voice. He knew the earth was corrupt, and God chose him as the messenger. But who believed him? People ridiculed him, laughed at his madness, and went on with their lives. After all, there was no rain, no sign of danger. What could possibly go wrong? Now think, how often have you seen people ignore clear warnings because they believed nothing would change? Just as in Noah's time, we live in a society that dismisses what it doesn't understand. Noah was an ordinary man, but his obedience made him extraordinary. He didn't build the ark because he wanted to. He did it because he knew that when God warns, it's only a matter of time before things happen. And you, what would you do if you received a clear warning to act? Consider the pressure Noah faced. Every day, he was seen as the madman of the region. Why build an ark if it doesn't rain? People asked. But he didn't stop. His faith was greater than the judgment of others. How many times have you abandoned something important because you were afraid of what others might think? Noah teaches us that when it comes to listening to God's voice, people's opinions are irrelevant. He didn't seek approval. He sought to obey. There's a chilling parallel between what Noah faced and what we experience today. In his time, corruption and violence ruled the world. Today, it's no different. Chaos is everywhere. In the streets, on social media, in governments. The difference is, while Noah built an ark of wood, our salvation may lie in rebuilding our values. But are we willing to do that? Or are we mocking the signs, just as they mocked Noah? God gave Noah detailed instructions to build the ark. It wasn't random. He had a plan, and Noah followed it. This makes us wonder, does God also have a plan for each of us? Are we listening? Are we willing to follow, even when we don't fully understand why? Noah's story shows us that obedience often requires sacrifice, persistence, and courage. Do you have that courage? What makes Noah such a powerful figure is not just his faith but his action. He didn't sit around waiting for a miracle. He worked day and night, even without seeing the flood coming. This teaches us that faith without works is dead. If we believe in something, we must act. And this truth is as relevant today as it was in his time. Are we ready to act, even when the results aren't immediate? Noah also faced loneliness. Even with his family by his side, he was a man against the world. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're fighting a battle no one else understands? This is the experience of those who choose to listen to God's voice in a world that prefers to ignore it. Noah shows us that loneliness can be a sign that we're on the right path. And then, the flood came. The rain that had never fallen before came with relentless force. Suddenly, all the laughter stopped. The ark became the only hope, but the door was already closed. How often do we ignore opportunities to change, assuming there will always be more time? The story of Noah is a powerful reminder that the time to act is now, before it's too late. Noah wasn't extraordinary. He was human, just like you and me. But he chose to listen, chose to act, and chose to believe. And that choice made all the difference. Today, we face similar choices. Will we ignore the warnings, or will we follow Noah's example? The answer to this question could determine our future. The prophecies fulfilled. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. These words are not just a distant warning. They echo in the events we're living through today, and the parallels are undeniable. The destruction of nature is evident. Forests are disappearing, oceans are filled with plastic, and entire species are vanishing as if the planet itself is crying out for help. Do you think all this is mere coincidence? Or are these signs that something far greater is happening? Noah lived in a time of widespread corruption, where violence and selfishness consumed the world. Today, we look around and see the same things: governments collapsing, unchecked greed, and a shocking indifference to the suffering of others. Ancient prophecies describe a world where love would grow cold, and that is exactly what we see. Acts of kindness are becoming rarer, as if everyone is blind to what truly matters. Pandemics, economic crises, and natural disasters are everywhere. All of this was described, predicted. Think of the modern plagues that sweep across entire populations. Diseases unheard of just decades ago are now common. It's as if history is repeating itself, an echo of the past. And yet, we refuse to learn from these lessons. Jesus spoke of wars and rumors of wars as a sign. Today, it's impossible to open the news without encountering conflicts in every corner of the world. Technology has connected us in ways once unimaginable, but it has also brought a constant sense of chaos. We're more informed yet less prepared. And you, how do you react to this news? With indifference or with the awareness that we're living in prophetic times? Scripture also speaks of false prophets and deceptive teachings. Never before have we had so much information at our fingertips, but this also means we've never been so exposed to lies. Everyone seems to have the truth in a world where truth is increasingly relative. People are searching for answers but often find only illusions. How do we distinguish what is real from what is just another deception? The signs are also evident in human behavior. Pride and arrogance are celebrated, while humility is seen as weakness. We're encouraged to pursue material wealth, success, and fame, but we forget the simple things that truly bring peace. This isn't just a modern problem. Prophecies warned that we'd reach this point. The question is, will we continue down this path, or will we wake up before it's too late? Another clear sign is emotional and spiritual exhaustion. People are increasingly anxious, depressed, and lost. The search for something greater is there, but many don't know where to find it. Biblical wisdom speaks of a time when humanity would feel this way, empty, despite having everything. Isn't that what we see around us? A void that even the greatest achievements cannot fill. The days of Noah were marked by indifference. People saw the signs but didn't care. Today, it's the same. We're so distracted by our own lives that we ignore what's right in front of us. But what if this is the last warning? What if this is the moment to wake up before the door of the ark closes again? Think about how you've responded to the signs. Do you ignore them or reflect on them? The prophecies aren't just warnings. They're opportunities to change, to find a different path. But action is needed now, before it's too late. Just like in Noah's days, the choices we make today can determine our future. If all this is so clear, why do we keep repeating the same mistakes? The answer to that question might lead us to the next point. What's to come? The story isn't over yet, and the prophecies have much more to reveal. A world in total chaos. What's next? Chaos seems to define the time we live in. Wars, hunger, social divisions, natural disasters. The list is endless. But what does it all mean? Some see it as mere misfortune or a natural cycle of the planet. However, it's impossible to ignore the parallels with biblical prophecies. Humanity is drifting further from its essential values, resulting in a society lost in selfishness and violence. Have you noticed how we're so consumed by our own lives that we forget to focus on what truly matters? Governments, which are meant to bring order, seem to be failing everywhere. Corruption dominates institutions, leaving people to suffer. Instead of seeking solutions, leaders compete for power as chaos grows. This echoes the scriptures, which speak of a time when the cup of iniquity will overflow. Are we living in that time now? Or is this just the beginning of something much greater? Social media, which should connect us, is filled with hate and division. How often do you log on only to leave feeling emptier, more disconnected? It's as if the world has never been more fragmented. Violence isn't just in the streets, it's in words, judgments, and criticism. It's hard not to ask, are we destroying ourselves from within? Natural disasters are also increasing in frequency and intensity. Hurricanes, earthquakes, Floods. It seems like nature is reacting to humanity's negligence. Science can explain part of it, but there's a spiritual element that can't be ignored. Prophecies speak of a time when creation will groan under the weight of humanity's sin. What if that's what we're witnessing now? How are we responding to these signs? Morality is also in decline. What was once considered right or wrong is now relative. People do whatever they want without thinking about the consequences. This too was foretold in prophecy, a time when everyone would do what seems right in their own eyes. Without a clear standard, where are we headed? Think about how stress and anxiety have become so common. People are more overwhelmed than ever. It's like we're running non-stop without knowing where we're going. We're accumulating material wealth while our souls remain empty. This isn't just an individual choice. It's a reflection of a society that has lost its focus. Where is hope in all this? The Bible also warns of a time of great deception, when many will be led astray by false teachings. What if that's already happening? With so many voices competing for attention, it's easy to get lost. That's why we need to be vigilant, to question, to seek the truth. But how can we know whom to trust? Have you stopped to think about what's coming next? Prophecies aren't just about destruction but also about a new beginning. However, before that, there's a period of great trial. Are we ready for it? Or will we be caught off guard, just like in the days of Noah? The chaos we see today may be just the prelude to something greater, a preparation for events that will transform the world as we know it. We're living in the middle of a grand plan, but many haven't realized it yet. And you, are you ready for what comes next? The answers may be closer than we think, but it takes courage to see them. Now is the time to reflect. Are we ready to face the future, or will we keep ignoring the signs until it's too late? Who are today's Noahs? In such a noisy world, it's hard to recognize the voices that truly matter. Just as Noah was called to warn of the flood, there are people today trying to awaken us to reality. Who are these modern-day Noahs? They are the ones who persist in speaking the truth, even when no one wants to hear it. They are the people who warn of the dangers of selfishness, corruption, and spiritual destruction, yet they are often ignored or ridiculed. Think about the people around you. Who tries to bring a message of hope or spiritual guidance? Who dares to go against the current, even knowing they'll be criticized? These individuals often face isolation, just as Noah did. But they remain steadfast because they know they are fulfilling a higher calling. And you, are you listening to these voices, or are you part of the crowd that prefers to ignore them? Today, we have pastors, community leaders, teachers, and even friends who try to warn us about the path we're on. But with so much information at our fingertips, it's easy to dismiss these warnings as outdated. Are we repeating the mistake of Noah's contemporaries, who laughed until it was too late? What if these messengers are our last chance to change? Noah's story teaches us that it takes courage to be different. He didn't follow the crowd. He listened to God's voice and acted, even when it seemed absurd. What if there were a similar call today? Would you be willing to hear it? Would you have the courage to stand up and act, even when everyone around you says you're wrong? These are questions each of us must ask ourselves. Today's Noahs aren't building wooden arks, but they are creating spaces for reflection and transformation. They challenge us to look inward, question our choices, and seek a greater purpose in life. They point to Scripture, to the teachings of Jesus, and to biblical wisdom that many of us have ignored. But are we willing to listen? Or do we prefer to remain focused on our own desires? It's common for modern messengers to face opposition. How often have you seen someone discredited for speaking about faith, values, or principles? Social media is full of debates, but few truly listen. We live in a time when being faithful to God is seen as a weakness, while following one's own desires is celebrated. Yet today's Noahs remain steadfast, knowing their mission is greater than human approval. If Noah were alive today, how would he be treated? Likely as a madman, a fanatic. And yet, he was the instrument God used to save his family and preserve creation. This makes us wonder, how many important messages have we ignored because we didn't like the messenger? You don't have to be a preacher or a religious leader to be a modern Noah. Often, the courage to stand for what is right is enough. It can be as simple as teaching your children about faith, helping someone in need, or standing against injustice. These small actions have the power to inspire others and show that hope still exists. Today's Noahs are everywhere, but we often fail to recognize them. Perhaps you are one of them and don't even realize it. Perhaps you're being called to something greater but lack the courage to take the first step. Noah's story isn't just about obedience. It's about the importance of acting when the world is falling apart. Think about this. Who are the Noahs around you? And more importantly, what are you doing with the warnings you've received? The time to act is now, before it's too late. The ark for today. What is our salvation? In Noah's time, salvation came in the form of an ark, a refuge built with his own hands but guided by divine instruction. Today, we don't need a wooden structure to face a literal storm, but the truth is, we still need an ark. A protection against the spiritual, moral, and emotional chaos that surrounds us. What is our ark today? Have you ever stopped to think about it? In a world that values the material above all, it's easy to forget that our true salvation doesn't lie in possessions but in spiritual values. Faith, love for others, and the pursuit of truth are the beams that hold up this invisible ark. Just as Noah followed God's call, we are challenged to build something in our lives that can protect us from the storms to come. Today's ark can be understood as a life guided by eternal principles. A life where God is at the center, not just a distant idea. Have you been building this foundation? Or are you relying only on what is temporary? Just as the rains came to test Noah's construction, life's trials test daily where we've placed our hope. Are you ready for these tests? Our ark today can also be the community we choose to walk with. Friends, family, and churches that share the same faith and values. Noah didn't face the flood alone. His family was with him. This teaches us that no one can overcome life's storms in isolation. Who stands beside you as you build your ark? Have you chosen wisely the people who help you stay steadfast? The time to prepare is now, not when the storm is upon us. Just as Noah acted in faith and perseverance, we are called to do the same, ensuring that our ark is ready before it's too late. Another powerful lesson is that the ark wasn't built in a day. It was a long process that required patience and dedication. Similarly, building a life that can withstand spiritual and emotional storms takes time. Small daily choices, like forgiving, loving, and seeking God, are like each nail Noah used in his ark. Are you making these choices? Or are you putting them off? Today's world offers many false arks, promises of instant salvation or effortless happiness. But these structures cannot withstand life's storms. They're like sandcastles, collapsing at the first sign of difficulty. Noah teaches us that true salvation requires work, faith, and a genuine connection with God. Can you identify the false arks in your life? Can you differentiate between what is fleeting and what is eternal? In times of crisis, it's common to seek refuge in things that seem secure: money, status, or superficial relationships. Yet none of these can provide the peace that comes from a life aligned with divine purpose. Noah's ark was a place of peace amidst destruction. Today, that same peace is available to anyone who chooses to trust in God. Are you seeking this peace, or are you caught in the world's restlessness? It's important to remember that Noah didn't wait for the rain to start building the ark. He acted in advance, trusting God's word. In the same way, we can't wait for crises to make decisions. The time to build the ark is now. Every day we delay is one less day to prepare. What are you doing to build your salvation? Finally, the ark represents hope. Even when everything seemed lost, Noah trusted that God had a plan. Today, we are called to have that same hope, even amid chaos. Do you believe there's something greater behind the difficulties you face? The ark wasn't just a boat, it was a symbol of God's faithfulness. What if we're being called to build something similar in our lives today? Think about it. Is your ark ready? Or are you still waiting for signs to begin? Are you ready for the final flood? Imagine standing before a massive storm. The sky darkens, the wind howls, and the world around you seems ready to collapse. This scene is metaphorical, yet no less real. The final flood may not be water, but challenges, choices, and consequences that test our faith and humanity. The question remains, are you ready? In Noah's time, the ark's door was shut. No one else could enter. Those who ignored the warnings faced the consequences. Today, the door remains open, but for how long? We are at a crossroads. Humanity is so consumed with its desires and distractions that it ignores the signs all around. Have you stopped to consider what truly matters? Preparing for the final flood is not something we can postpone. Each day is an opportunity to align our lives, seek God, and build a foundation that cannot be shaken. How do we do this? Start by evaluating your priorities. What have you been putting first? Is your spiritual life as strong as it should be? These are questions we must answer before it's too late. The Bible speaks of the end times not to instill fear but to warn and prepare us. Just as Noah received detailed instructions to build the ark, we have been given clear guidance on how to live. Love, faith, forgiveness, and compassion are the tools God has provided to help us face the chaos. Are you using these tools, or are you relying solely on your own strength? The final flood may not come as water, but the signs are everywhere. Humanity's corruption, social divisions, natural disasters. All of these point to something greater. And you, are you ready to face these storms? Or are you ignoring the warnings, hoping everything will return to normal? The truth is, the world has already changed, and there's no going back. Now is the time to act, to build, and to trust. Before the door closes. It's important to remember that in Noah's time, it wasn't the strongest or the wealthiest who survived. It was those who listened and obeyed. This teaches us that survival is not about what we have but about who we are and what we believe. Are you ready to trust God even when everything around you feels uncertain? Preparation also means being willing to change. Noah had to completely adjust his life to follow God's call. Today, we are called to do the same. But this requires courage, because change is never easy. What are you willing to sacrifice to be ready for what's coming? What choices can you make today that will impact your future? You might think there's still time, but the truth is no one knows the day or the hour. The only thing we can control is how we choose to live right now. And that makes all the difference. The final flood is a test of our faith, our courage, and our ability to hear God. Are you ready to pass that test? Just as the rain finally came in Noah's time, a defining moment is coming for all of us. But there is still hope. There's still time to build a life that can withstand the storms. What are you waiting for? Each day is an opportunity to choose the right path. And what if this is the last warning? What if the time we have now is the final moment to prepare? Are you ready for the final flood? Now that you know, what will you do? Now that you've learned the signs, the prophecies, and the lessons from Noah's days, the big question is, what will you do with all of this? Will you continue living as if nothing is happening, or will you use this opportunity to change your life? The truth is, we're all at a crossroads. The time for waiting is over, and the time to act is now. There's no room for excuses or ignoring the signs around us. Think about it. If you knew the future of the world depended on the choices you make today, what would you do differently? Would you start living with more purpose? Seek spiritual guidance? Take better care of your family and friends? These questions aren't just theoretical. They are the key to understanding where you are and where you want to go. Are you ready to take the next step? It's not just about believing, it's about acting, about building your own ark to face the storms ahead. Start today. Read the Bible, seek teachings, find a group that shares your faith, and be willing to grow together. Stop waiting for the world to get better on its own. Be the change you want to see. Like Noah, you can make a difference even when everything seems lost. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. God never abandons us, and He is always ready to guide us, as long as we're willing to listen. Don't wait for the storm to seek refuge. Build your foundation now, while there's still time. Prophecies are a call to action, not fear. Use this chance to transform your life and find the peace that the world cannot offer. Finally, don't let this message stop with you. Share it with those you love, because we're all in this journey together. And if you want to keep learning and growing stronger, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and follow every video we post. There's so much more to explore, and together we can face what's coming with faith, strength, and hope.